The training hall of the Vernex Combat Academy was enormous. The ceiling stretched so high above that most species needed optical enhancers to see it clearly. Massive pillars held everything up, each one thick enough to house a small transport vessel inside. The floor was made of compressed metals from a dozen different worlds, designed to handle impacts that would crack planetary bedrock. Kira Santos stood in line with 43 other cadets. She was the only human in this particular training group. Around her stood beings from across the known galaxy, each one representing their species' finest physical specimens. To her left was Thorax, an insectoid warrior whose exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms that could each bench press a small vehicle. To her right was Velorn, a reptilian soldier whose scales were harder than most body armor. His species came from a world where volcanic activity was considered mild weather. They were all waiting for their turn at the striking assessment. The composite training walls lined one side of the hall. They looked simple enough, just dark gray barriers about 3 meters tall and half a meter thick. But Kira had read about them during her orientation materials. These walls were built from asteroid core materials, bonded together with crystalline matrices that could absorb incredible amounts of force. They were designed to withstand strikes from the strongest species in the coalition without breaking. Training equipment that could survive anything. Instructor Grethkor paced in front of the assembled cadets like a caged predator. He was massive even by the standards of the academy. His species evolved on a high-gravity world, and every movement he made seemed to carry the weight of mountains. Scars covered his armored hide, each one a story from the countless battles he had survived. He was a legend at the academy, a veteran of the siege of Kryn where he had single-handedly held a defensive position for 6 days straight. Strength is not optional. Grethkor's voice boomed across the hall. Your enemies will not care about your feelings. They will not pause while you gather courage. When you strike to end the threat. Anything less is failure. A cadet stepped forward. She was from a species Kira didn't recognize, with 6 limbs and a body like a bear crossed with an octopus. The cadet approached the wall, reared back and struck with 3 of her limbs simultaneously. The impact echoed through the hall like a thunderclap. When she stepped back, a visible dent marked the wall's surface. Adequate, Grethkor grunted. Next. One by one, cadets demonstrated their power. A crystalline being struck with fists that rang like bells. A gas-based entity compressed itself into a battering ram. A massive quadruped charged the wall with its armored head. Each impact was impressive in its own way. Some left deep dents. Others created spiderweb cracks. A few barely marked the surface at all, earning harsh critiques from Grethkor. Thorax clicked his mandibles nervously as the line shortened. Human Kira, he said, his voice like gravel in a mixer. Perhaps you should request medical personnel on standby. Your skeletal structure appears fragile. These walls do not yield easily, and the impact forces could damage your limbs. Kira smiled up at him. That's kind of you to worry, Thorax. But I'll be okay. Velorn leaned over, his scales scraping together with a sound like knives being sharpened. No shame in requesting accommodation, Santos. Your species is new to the coalition. The academy understands that not all members are suited for frontline combat roles. I appreciate that, Kira said. Really? But I came here to train as a combat specialist, same as everyone else. The 2 aliens exchanged glances that clearly said they thought she was being foolishly proud. Finally, Kira's name was called. She stepped forward, very aware of all the eyes tracking her movement. Humans were still rare in coalition space. Earth had only joined 3 cycles ago, and most species knew almost nothing about them. She had read her own species file in the Academy database. Humans were classified as moderate strength, moderate speed, moderate durability. The only exceptional ratings they had were in endurance and adaptability. Unremarkable in almost every measurable way. She approached her assigned wall section. It was pristine, unmarked by any previous cadet's attempts. The surface was cool and slightly rough under her fingertips when she touched it briefly. She took a breath, rolled her shoulders to loosen them, and set her stance the way she had been taught in basic training back on Earth. Then she threw her first punch. The impact was soft. Quiet. Her fist met the composite material and bounced off gently, as if she had simply tapped it to say hello. No dent formed. No crack appeared. The wall absorbed her strike without any visible effect whatsoever. Someone behind her laughed. Then someone else. Within seconds, nervous chuckles rippled through the assembled cadets. Kira stayed at the wall, her hands still raised, staring at the unmarked surface. Instructor Grethkor's expression shifted from neutral observation to open contempt. He crossed his massive arms and shook his head slowly. "This," he announced loudly, making sure everyone could hear him clearly, "is the striking power of a so-called deathworld species?" More laughter. Louder this time. Grethkor walked closer, circling Kira like a predator examining wounded prey. "Your homeworld classification is based on dangerous flora and fauna, I see. Predators, diseases, environmental hazards." He paused dramatically. "But the species itself? Clearly not designed for combat. Look at this bone structure. These thin limbs. This fragile frame." Kira's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. "Perhaps," Grethkor continued, playing to his audience now, "you should request transfer to medical division. Or perhaps logistics. Your biology is simply unsuited for the rigors of frontline combat. There is no shame in recognizing one's limitations." He made it sound like shame was exactly what she should feel. Thorax clicked sympathetically behind her. Velorn looked away, clearly embarrassed on her behalf. Other cadets whispered to each other, and Kira caught fragments of their conversations. "Weak, fragile. Should never have been accepted. Diversity quota." The words stung more than she wanted to admit. But Kira remained at the wall. She hadn't moved from her position. Hadn't turned around. Hadn't acknowledged the mockery at all. Her hand was still pressed against the cool composite surface, and her breathing had become very measured. Very controlled. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but perfectly clear in the suddenly silent hall. "Instructor Grethkor, sir. May I try again? I believe I used improper form on that attempt." The instructor's laugh was harsh and cruel. "Improper form? By all means, Cadet Santos. Please demonstrate this proper form your species has developed." His tone made it clear he expected nothing different from her second attempt. Several cadets chuckled again, anticipating another embarrassing display. Kira stepped back from the wall just a few paces. She rotated her shoulders carefully, then her neck, then her wrists. Each movement was slow and deliberate, like an athlete preparing for a major event. Then she turned slightly and looked back at the assembled group. "You might want to step back," she said calmly. "For safety reasons." This brought the loudest laughter yet. Grethkor's booming guffaw echoed off the high ceiling. "Step back? From what, exactly? Your devastating proper form?" But something in Kira's eyes made a few of the smarter cadets actually take a step backward. Thorax's antennae twitched nervously. Velorn's tail stopped swishing. Kira turned back to face the wall. She took one deep, measured breath. Set her feet in a slightly wider stance than before. Flexed her fingers once. And then she did something humans very rarely do. She released every psychological limiter her brain had spent her entire life maintaining. The change in Kira was subtle at first. Her breathing pattern shifted from normal to something deeper, more rhythmic. Her muscles, which had looked lean and unremarkable moments before, suddenly stood out in sharp definition across her arms and shoulders. The tendons in her neck became visible as cords of tension. Grethkor was still smirking, preparing another cutting remark about human weakness, when Kira's fist connected with the wall for the second time. The sound was nothing like her first punch. This impact didn't whisper or tap. It roared. The noise rolled through the training hall like thunder during a planetary storm, so loud that several cadets reflexively covered their hearing organs. The composite wall, engineered to absorb punishment from species 3 times human mass, spiderwebbed with cracks. Fracture lines raced outward from the impact point in every direction, creating a pattern like lightning frozen in stone. Small fragments of the crystalline matrix began falling to the floor with delicate tinkling sounds that seemed impossibly gentle after that massive boom. Every laugh died instantly. Every whisper stopped. The training hall became so quiet that Kira could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Grethkor's mandibles hung open. His prepared insult, whatever cruel thing he had been about to say, evaporated from his mind completely. He just stared at the damaged wall, his brain struggling to process what his eyes were showing him. Before the shock could fully settle, before anyone could speak or move or even breathe properly, Kira struck again. Her third punch followed her second with barely a heartbeat between them. This time she put everything into it, every ounce of force her body could generate when all the safety protocols were turned off. Her fist connected with the already compromised wall section, and the result was catastrophic. The composite material exploded. There was no other word for it. The wall section that could withstand plasma fire and kinetic artillery rounds simply shattered like glass under a hammer. Chunks of asteroid core material, each piece weighing dozens of kilograms, flew backward and scattered across the floor. The crystalline matrix that held everything together burst into thousands of glittering fragments. Dust billowed outward in a massive cloud, spreading across half the training hall and making several cadets cough and wheeze. The sound of debris hitting the floor went on and on. Big pieces crashed and bounced. Small pieces pattered like rain. Dust settled slowly, creating a haze in the air that caught the harsh training lights and turned them into diffuse glows. Through the settling dust, Kira stepped backward from the destroyed wall section. Her movement was casual, unhurried. She looked down at her right hand and shook it out gently, the way someone might after writing for too long. Her knuckles were red, slightly abraded, but there were no cuts. No breaks. No bones sticking out at wrong angles. She flexed her fingers experimentally, testing each one, then nodded to herself as if satisfied. The silence in the hall was absolute. 43 cadets stood frozen, their various biological functions temporarily suspended by shock. Some had their mouths open. Others had stopped mid-gesture. Thorax's antennae had gone completely rigid. Velorn's tail hung limp, forgotten. Kira turned to face Instructor Grethkor. Her expression was calm, professional, exactly what a cadet should be when addressing a superior officer. Not a trace of smugness showed on her face. No hint of satisfaction at proving him wrong. She could have gloated. She could have thrown his mockery back at him. Instead, she simply stood at attention and asked in a perfectly level voice, "Was that the proper form you were looking for, sir?" Grethkor didn't answer. Couldn't answer. His massive frame had gone completely still, like a statue carved from living stone. His eyes, which had held such contempt minutes before, now showed something else entirely. Confusion. Disbelief. And underneath both of those, the first stirrings of what might have been fear. The instructor finally moved, taking one involuntary step backward. It was a tiny movement, barely noticeable, but everyone saw it. Grethkor, veteran of 100 battles, survivor of the Siege of Kryn, hero of the Coalition, had just flinched away from a human cadet half his size. "That's impossible," someone whispered. Kira wasn't sure who. The voice came from somewhere behind her, shaky and uncertain. "Did you see that?" another cadet hissed. "The wall just. How is she not injured? What kind of species?" The whispers built like a wave, growing louder as shock gave way to amazement and confusion. Cadets pressed forward, trying to get a better look at the destruction. The hole in the wall was massive, easily 2 meters across. Rubble lay scattered in a rough semicircle extending 5 meters from the impact point. The edges of the remaining wall showed stress fractures that hadn't been there before. Thorax approached slowly, his multiple eyes fixed on Kira's hand. "Your bones?" he clicked, his voice filled with genuine concern. "They must be shattered. Internal damage. You need medical attention immediately." Kira held up her hand for him to see. "It's fine, Thorax. A little red, but nothing serious." "That's not possible," Velorn said, coming up on her other side. His scales had shifted to a pale color that Kira had learned indicated distress in his species. The kinetic force required to damage those walls would pulverize organic tissue. "Your hand should be destroyed." "Human bones are pretty tough," Kira said simply. "And we heal fast." An alarm began blaring somewhere in the facility. Red lights flashed along the walls. Within seconds, the training hall doors burst open and academy officials rushed in. Security personnel in full combat armor. Medical staff carrying emergency equipment. Engineers with scanning devices. They had obviously been monitoring the assessment, and the sudden destruction had triggered multiple safety protocols. A medical officer, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish with too many tentacles, swooped toward Kira immediately. "Cadet, remain still. You may be in shock. Internal injuries are likely severe." "I'm fine really," Kira insisted, but the medical officer was already running scanners over her body. The device beeped and hummed, analyzing her bone density, checking for fractures, measuring tissue damage. The medical officer's tentacles quivered in confusion. "This reading cannot be correct. According to my instruments, you have sustained minimal damage. Minor abrasions on the epidermis. Slight inflammation in the muscle tissue. But no breaks. No tears. No hemorrhaging." The officer looked at the destroyed wall, then back at Kira. "This is inconsistent with the force required to cause such destruction." An academy engineer was examining the rubble, scanning the fragments with his own devices. "Sir," he called to someone Kira couldn't see. "These composite materials show failure patterns consistent with explosive force. Multiple tons of pressure applied in a fraction of a second. But localized. concentrated at a single point. He picked up a chunk of wall material, turning it over in his hands. I've never seen anything like this from an organic strike. More officials arrived. Someone who looked important started asking questions in rapid succession. How had this happened? What kind of enhancement was the human using? Were there cybernetic implants? Chemical boosters? Illegal modifications? Kira answered each question patiently. No enhancements, no implants, no chemicals. Just her fist, and a wall that apparently wasn't as strong as advertised. Through it all, Grethkor stood silent, still staring at the destruction. His earlier contempt had vanished completely, replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like respect mixed with uncertainty. He had trained thousands of cadets over his long career. He had seen every species the Coalition had to offer demonstrate their abilities. But he had never, not once, seen anything like what had just happened. Finally, the commotion began to die down. The medical officer reluctantly cleared Kira as physically sound. The engineers started discussing wall repairs and material upgrades. Security determined there was no actual threat. Slowly, gradually, attention turned back to Instructor Grethkor, waiting for him to decide what happened next. The instructor cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice had lost all its earlier mockery. Class dismissed. Report to your next training module. The Academy's medical wing was sterile and white, filled with equipment designed to treat 100 different species. Kira sat on an examination platform while various scanners hummed around her. Across from her, 3 Academy officials occupied chairs that had been hastily brought in. Instructor Grethkor stood against the wall, his arms crossed, his expression somewhere between fascinated and disturbed. The head physician, Dr. Ilix, was a being that resembled a collection of floating spheres connected by energy fields. Each sphere glowed a different color, and Kira had learned that the colors indicated different emotional states. Right now, most of the spheres were bright orange, which meant confusion. Explain again, demanded Commander Thelnix, the Academy's Director of Combat Training. She was a tall, elegant being with crystalline skin that refracted light in rainbow patterns. Your species classification lists humans as moderate strength. Moderate in nearly every physical category except endurance. Yet you destroyed a wall designed to withstand assault from Class 7 heavy combat species. Kira took a breath, trying to figure out how to explain something that most humans took for granted. It's about control, she began. Humans don't usually use our full strength. We can't actually. Not safely. Cannot. Grethkor spoke up from his position by the wall. I witnessed you do exactly that. I said not safely, Kira corrected gently. Let me start from the beginning. Humans evolved on Earth, which you all know is classified as a Class 4 death world. Everything there wants to kill you. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans sometimes. To survive, we developed a lot of advantages. Strong bones, dense muscles, fast healing. But we also developed something else. She held up her hand, the one she had used to destroy the wall. Our muscles are actually capable of generating enormous force. Much more than most species realize. But if we used that force all the time, we would destroy ourselves. Tendons would tear. Bones would crack. Joints would dislocate. So our brains developed limiters. Limiters? Commander Thelnix leaned forward. Explain. Psychological limiters, Kira said. Mental blocks that our nervous system maintains automatically. They restrict how much of our actual strength we can access during normal activity. It's like having a safety switch built into your brain. Dr. Ilix's spheres shifted to a purple color, which Kira thought meant interest. This is a neurological function? Not muscular? Both, Kira said. The limiters work by preventing our nervous system from sending full-strength signals to our muscles. Under normal circumstances, humans operate at maybe 30 to 40% of our actual maximum capacity. Grethkor pushed off from the wall, his interest clearly piqued despite himself. 30%? You are saying that gentle first strike represented 30% of your capability? Probably less, honestly, Kira admitted. That was social-level force. The kind of punch you might throw playing around with friends. Not even trying to hurt anyone. Just touching, really? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Why? Commander Thelnix asked finally. Why would a species evolve to restrict its own combat effectiveness? Because we don't live in combat every second of every day, Kira explained. Humans are social creatures. We live in groups. We cooperate. We build things together. If we used full strength all the time, we would hurt each other constantly. A friendly pat on the back would break ribs. Shaking hands would crush fingers. Playing with our children would kill them. She gestured around the room. Plus, using full strength damages our own bodies. When I hit that wall with everything I had, I felt it. My bones absorbed massive impact forces. My tendons stretched to their limits. My muscles tore microscopically. I can do it, but I'll be sore for days, and if I did it repeatedly, I would start causing permanent damage. Dr. Ilex floated closer, scanning Kira's hand with a handheld device. I am detecting microfractures in the bone structure. Inflammation in the connective tissue. Minor damage to muscle fibers. Yet you show no signs of distress. Pain tolerance, Kira said with a slight smile. Another deathworld adaptation. Humans can function through injuries that would incapacitate most species. We have to. On Earth, stopping to nurse a wound might mean something eats you. One of the other officials, a reptilian being Kira didn't know, spoke up for the first time. These limiters. How do you bypass them? Adrenaline mostly, Kira explained. It's a chemical our bodies produce in response to danger. When we're scared or angry or in a life-threatening situation, our brains release the limiters partially. That's where you get stories of human parents lifting vehicles off their children. Or soldiers performing impossible feats in combat. The adrenaline tells the brain that survival is more important than safety, so the limiters come off. And you did this intentionally? Grethkor asked. During a training exercise? Kira shrugged. I've had training. Military personnel on Earth learn to access greater percentages of their strength through breathing techniques and mental discipline. It's not as much as a true adrenaline response, but it's enough. That second punch was probably 70%. The third was close to maximum. Dr. Ilex's spheres turned a deep blue, which Kira was starting to think meant alarm. You intentionally subjected your body to forces that cause structural damage. For a demonstration. It's not that bad, Kira protested. I'll heal. Humans heal fast. Another deathworld thing. These microfractures will be repaired in a few days. The muscle damage will regenerate. I'll be fine. Commander Thelnix stood up and began pacing, her crystalline body casting rainbow shadows on the walls. This explains the inconsistency in our data. When we tested human volunteers for the Coalition database, they were in controlled, non-threatening situations. The limiters remained active. Exactly, Kira said. You tested us at social level capacity, not combat capacity. How much stronger are humans at full capacity? The reptilian official asked. Kira considered the question. It varies by individual. Average humans might be 2 to 3 times stronger when limiters are fully released. Trained individuals like soldiers or athletes can access more. I've heard stories of people in extreme situations reaching 4 or 5 times their normal strength. Grethkor's expression had changed completely from their encounter in the training hall. Now he looked at Kira the way one might look at a bomb that could go off at any moment. You are saying that every human walks around with the combat capacity of a heavy assault unit, but simply chooses not to use it? More or less, Kira agreed. Though it's not really a choice. The limiters are automatic. We have to consciously work to bypass them. Dr. Ilex finished examining Kira's hand and floated backward, spheres shifting through several colors rapidly. I must confirm this with detailed analysis. With your permission, Cadet Santos, I would like to perform comprehensive scans. Muscle tissue samples. Bone density measurements. Neurological mapping. Of course, Kira said. The physician immediately began pulling up holographic displays, muttering to itself in a language Kira didn't understand. Data scrolled past in streams of light. Comparison charts appeared, showing human physiology next to dozens of other species. After several minutes, Dr. Ilex spoke again, its voice filled with something that might have been awe. Remarkable. Human muscle tissue is approximately 40% denser than species of comparable size. Bone structure shows calcium deposits and mineral reinforcement beyond typical carbon-based life forms. The skeletal system is designed to flex under stress rather than break. Tendons have elasticity coefficients normally seen only in species 3 times your mass. The physician turned to face Commander Thelnix directly. The database classification is severely inaccurate. Humans should not be listed as moderate strength. When accounting for their neurological limiters, their true combat capacity places them in the high-strength category. Possibly very high. Commander Thelnix absorbed this information in silence. Then she looked at Kira with new understanding. You are a species that fights with the safety engaged. That's one way to put it, Kira said. Grethkor spoke quietly from his position by the wall. I mocked you. Called you fragile. Suggested you were unsuited for combat. He paused, and when he continued, his voice held genuine remorse. I was wrong. I apologize, Cadet Santos. Kira stood up from the examination platform and faced her instructor. You had no way to know, sir. The database was incomplete. You made a reasonable assumption based on available information. I made an assumption based on arrogance, Grethkor corrected. I saw a species I did not know and assumed weakness. That is a failure of instruction, not information. News traveled fast at the Vernex Combat Academy. By the next morning cycle, every cadet, instructor, and support staff member had heard about the human who destroyed a training wall with her bare hands. The story grew with each retelling. Some versions had Kira punching through 3 walls. Others claimed she had done it without even trying. A few particularly creative accounts suggested she had actually been holding back even during her 3rd strike. Kira tried to ignore the attention. She went to her classes, completed her assignments, and avoided the stares that followed her through the corridors. But avoiding attention at an academy full of warriors was impossible. Everywhere she went, conversation stopped. Cadets stepped aside to let her pass. Some looked at her with respect. Others with suspicion. A few with outright fear. On the 3rd day after the incident, everything changed. Kira was in the dining facility, eating lunch alone at a corner table. She had just taken a bite of something that tasted vaguely like chicken when a shadow fell across her tray. She looked up to find a being standing over her that made Grethkor look small by comparison. Commander Zwaxtal was a legend at the academy. He stood nearly 4 meters tall, his body covered in interlocking armor plates that had been grown, not manufactured. His species came from a world where evolution had taken a violent turn, producing natural warriors that needed no weapons or tools to be deadly. Zwaxtal had been the Academy's combat tournament champion for 6 consecutive cycles. No one had even come close to defeating him. Human, his voice rumbled like an avalanche. I am told you have exceptional striking power. Kira set down her fork carefully. I can hit pretty hard, yes sir. I have held the combat championship for 6 cycles, Zwaxtal said. In that time I have faced every species the coalition offers. I have defeated opponents larger than myself, faster than myself, more technically skilled. Yet none have truly challenged me. He paused, his massive head tilting slightly. I wish to fight you. The dining facility had gone completely silent. Every being in the room was watching this interaction. A sanctioned match, Zwaxtal continued. Full academy protocols. Medical staff standing by. Regulated equipment. Victory by submission, incapacitation, or judge's decision. Kira's mind raced. Fighting the undefeated champion was probably not a smart career move. If she lost badly, it would embarrass not just her but all of humanity. If she got injured, it could end her academy career. The safe choice was to politely decline. But Kira hadn't come to the academy to make safe choices. I accept, she said quietly. A ripple of excited whispers spread through the dining facility like wildfire. Zwaxtal's armored face plates shifted in what might have been a smile. Excellent. The match will be held in 7 days. That gives you time to prepare. He turned to leave, then paused and looked back. I look forward to a worthy challenge, human. After he left, the dining facility erupted into chaos. Cadets crowded around Kira's table, all talking at once. Some wanted to know if she was crazy. Others wanted to place bets. A few offered unsolicited advice about fighting technique. Kira excused herself as quickly as possible and retreated to her quarters, her lunch forgotten. The next morning, Instructor Grethkor was waiting outside her door. Walk with me, Cadet Santos, he said without preamble. They walked through the academy grounds in silence for a while. Finally, Grethkor spoke. You have accepted a challenge from Commander Zwaxtal. This was either very brave or very foolish. Probably both, Kira admitted. He has never been defeated, Grethkor said. Never even been truly challenged. His species evolved for combat. He is stronger than you, more durable than you, and has centuries of experience. I know. And yet you accepted. Kira stopped walking and turned to face her instructor. If I'm going to be a coalition soldier, I need to prove I belong here. Not just to everyone else. To myself. Running from this fight would mean I don't really believe in what I'm doing. Grethkor studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. I will train you. Sir? I mocked you. Dismissed you. Called you weak in front of your peers. I owe you better than that. If you are going to face Zwaxtal, you will do it properly prepared. He gestured toward the training facilities. We begin immediately. The next 7 days were brutal. Grethcore pushed Kira harder than any training she had experienced on Earth. They started before dawn and finished after dark. He taught her to read opponents, to spot weaknesses in technique, to use speed and positioning when strength wasn't enough. But more than that, he learned from her. "Your cardiovascular system is remarkable," Grethcore observed on the third day, watching as Kira completed her 5th straight hour of high-intensity drills without significant fatigue. Most species would have collapsed by now. Kira wiped sweat from her face. "Humans evolved to run prey animals to death. We're not fast, but we can keep going basically forever. It's called persistence hunting." "Explain," Grethcore commanded. "On Earth, humans used to hunt by just following prey for hours or days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. We can't outrun a deer in a sprint, but we can jog after it all day while it has to stop and rest. Eventually, it's too tired to run anymore." She demonstrated with a steady jogging pace. "We can regulate our body temperature through sweating, which most Earth animals can't do. So we stay cool while they overheat." Grethcore's eyes widened. "You are persistence predators." We don't hunt that way anymore. But the biology remains." The instructor processed this information. "So in a prolonged fight, you would have an advantage in stamina." "Probably. If I can make Xuextao work hard enough, he'll tire before I do." They adjusted the training strategy immediately. Instead of trying to match Xuextao's strength, they focused on endurance tactics. Kira learned to keep moving, to never stop, to make her opponent chase and react and expend energy. She practiced taking hits that would have floored most species, absorbing the impact and continuing to fight through pain that would incapacitate others. "Your pain tolerance is abnormal," Grethcore noted after Kira took a training strike that should have broken ribs. She grimaced but stayed on her feet. "Deathworld adaptation," Kira said through gritted teeth. "On Earth, if you stop fighting because something hurts, you die. So we evolved to keep functioning through injuries." Other human cadets began showing up to watch the training sessions. There were only 15 humans total at the academy, and most had experienced the same dismissive treatment Kira had faced. They saw her challenge as representing all of them. Tyler Brooks, a human from the engineering division, started bringing technical analysis of Xuextao's previous fights. "He favors his left side after the first few minutes," Tyler explained, showing holographic footage. "Probably an old injury that never healed right." Sarah Chin, who studied tactical operations, mapped out potential strategies. "He's used to opponents who try to overpower him. Everyone fights his fight. You need to make him fight yours." Kira appreciated the support even as the pressure mounted. The match had become the most anticipated event of the training cycle. Betting pools appeared. Analysis segments ran on the Academy's information network. Some commentators gave Kira a chance. Most predicted a quick defeat. The night before the match, Grethcore found Kira in the training hall, going through forms alone. "You should be resting," he said. "Can't sleep." "Nervous." "Terrified," Kira admitted. Grethcore sat down on a training bench that creaked under his weight. "I have trained thousands of cadets. Most were stronger than you. Faster. Better equipped by their biology for combat. But I have rarely seen anyone with your determination." He paused. "Win or lose tomorrow, you have already proven you belong here." Kira smiled. "Thanks, sir. But I'd still rather win." "Then remember what we practiced. Make him chase. Make him work. Use your endurance. And when he thinks he knows what you can do, show him something new." "Yes, sir." "And Kira?" Grethcore used her first name for the first time. "Make him earn it." The main arena was packed beyond capacity. Cadets filled every seat, stood in every aisle, and pressed against the barriers for a better view. Instructors who normally maintained strict professional distance were placing bets with each other. Even support staff had found excuses to attend. The academy hadn't seen this level of excitement in years. Kira stood in her corner of the fighting ring, a circular platform 50 meters across with a padded surface designed to absorb impacts. She wore standard academy sparring gear, light armor over vital areas, sensor bands to monitor her physical condition, and nothing else. Across from her, Xuextao looked like a mountain given life. His natural armor gleamed under the bright lights, and his massive frame made the regulation equipment look like toys. The referee, a neutral official from a non-combat species, floated to the center of the ring. "This is a sanctioned academy combat match. Victory by submission, unconsciousness, or technical decision. Medical override remains in effect at all times. Competitors, acknowledge understanding." "Acknowledged," Kira said. "Acknowledged," Xuextao rumbled. "Begin." Tal moved immediately, faster than something his size should be able to move. He closed the distance in 3 massive strides and swung a fist that could have dented a vehicle. Kira had been expecting this. She slipped to the side, letting the strike pass where her head had been a moment before. The wind from the punch ruffled her hair. She didn't counterattack. Not yet. Instead, she kept moving, circling, staying just out of reach. Tal pursued, throwing combinations that would have ended the fight instantly if they connected. Each strike was powerful enough to break bones, but Kira made them miss. Barely. By centimeters sometimes. "The human is running," someone shouted from the crowd. But Grethkor, watching from the front row, recognized what Kira was doing. She wasn't running. She was learning. Every dodge gave her information. How fast Tal moved. His reach. His patterns. The way he favored certain combinations. She was taking mental notes while using minimal energy. Tal caught on after a few minutes. "You avoid combat," he said, not even breathing hard. "This is disappointing." Kira didn't respond. She kept moving, kept dodging, kept making him chase. She absorbed one hit deliberately, letting a strike catch her shoulder. The impact sent her sliding across the platform, but she rolled with it and came up in a defensive stance. The sensors on her arm lit up yellow, indicating moderate damage, but she showed no sign of pain. "Interesting," Tal observed. "You withstand that blow well." "I'm a fast healer," Kira said and kept circling. The first 5 minutes passed this way. Tal on the offensive, powerful and technical. Kira defensive, absorbing what she couldn't avoid, avoiding everything else. The crowd grew restless. This wasn't the exciting match they had expected. Then Kira changed tactics. Tal threw another combination, the same one he had used 3 times already. But this time, instead of dodging backward, Kira moved forward. She slipped inside his guard and struck his midsection with a sharp jab. Not full force. Maybe 50%. But enough. Tal grunted in surprise. The hit had actually hurt. Kira was already moving, circling out before he could counter. But now her movement pattern was different. She wasn't just dodging anymore. She was positioning. Setting up angles. When Tal came at her again, she met him with a combination of her own. Cross. Low kick to his lead leg. Each strike landing clean. The crowd's energy shifted immediately. This was more like it. For the next several minutes, they traded blows. Tal's strikes were heavier, more powerful, each one capable of ending the fight. But Kira was faster and she was getting faster while he was staying the same. More importantly, she was breathing normally while Tal's breath was starting to come harder. "You are skilled," Tal admitted, blocking a kick aimed at his knee. "More than I anticipated." "You're pretty good yourself," Kira said and struck again. They had been fighting for 12 minutes now. Tal was starting to slow down. Not much. Most of the crowd probably didn't notice. But Kira noticed. His combinations were coming slightly slower. His footwork was getting heavier. His breathing had shifted from controlled to labored. Kira meanwhile felt like she was just getting warmed up. Her heart rate was elevated but steady. Her muscles were loose and responsive. This was what humans did. This was what they were built for. Not short explosive bursts of power but sustained effort over time. The persistence predator doing what millions of years of evolution had designed it to do. "You do not tire?" Tal observed. There was surprise in his voice now, maybe even concern. "Not really, no," Kira admitted. "Want to take a break?" For answer, Tal launched a massive assault, throwing everything he had into a series of devastating strikes. Kira couldn't dodge them all. She took hits to her ribs, her arms, her legs. The sensors lit up like emergency beacons. Yellow. Orange. One briefly flashed red before returning to orange. Each hit would have hospitalized a normal human. But Kira stayed on her feet. She took the punishment, absorbed it, and when Tal's combination ended and he paused to breathe, she counterattacked. This time at 70% capacity. Her strikes landed like hammers. Tal's armor plates, which had turned aside every previous hit, actually cracked under the force. The crowd went absolutely wild. "Now we fight properly," Tal said, and there was respect in his voice. They had been fighting for 18 minutes. For most species, this would be approaching the limit of sustainable combat. For Tal, bred for battle, it was entering the danger zone where fatigue led to mistakes. For Kira, it was barely getting started. She could see it in his movements now. The micro-hesitations. The slightly dropped guard. The way he was favoring his left side just like Tyler had predicted. Zhuang's Tao was still dangerous, still skilled, still powerful. But he was tiring and they both knew it. Kira pressed the advantage. She increased her pace, throwing more combinations, making him work harder to defend. She aimed for his weakened left side, forcing him to adjust his stance. She moved constantly, never giving him a moment to rest, making him turn and chase and react. 25 minutes into the match, Zhuang's Tao stumbled. Just slightly. Just for a moment. But it was enough. Kira could have ended it then. She had position, momentum, and Zhuang's Tao was off balance. A full-force strike to his exposed midsection would have scored a technical victory. But something made her hesitate. This was a warrior who had agreed to fight her when no one else would. Who had given her the chance to prove herself. She pulled back, giving him space to recover. Zhuang's Tao recognized the gesture. He steadied himself, took several deep breaths, and met her eyes. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Zhuang's Tao did something that shocked everyone in the arena. He straightened to his full height, placed his primary fist over his chest in the traditional coalition gesture of respect, and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. I concede this match. The arena erupted in chaos. Shouting, cheering, arguments. The referee quickly floated between them, officially declaring Kira the victor. Medical staff rushed in, scanning both fighters. Kira's readouts showed exhaustion, multiple bruises, and minor tissue damage. Zhuang's Tao showed similar injuries plus significant cardiovascular strain. Zhuang's Tao waved the medical staff away and approached Kira directly. You could have finished me when I stumbled, he said quietly. You gave me an honorable fight, Kira replied. Seemed right to return the favor. I have fought for 6 cycles, Zhuang's Tao said, loud enough for the crowd to hear again. I have defeated every challenger. I believed I understood combat. I believed I understood strength. He paused, making sure everyone was listening. I was wrong. I underestimated not just you, Cadet Santos, but your entire species. Humanity does not fight with the raw power many species possess. You fight with endurance, adaptability, the ability to suffer damage and continue. You are persistence predators, and I did not understand what that meant until today. The crowd had gone silent again, listening to the undefeated champion's words. Earth produced you through trial by fire, Zhuang's Tao continued. And the galaxy would be wise to remember that a soft first touch does not indicate weakness. It may simply indicate politeness. He extended his massive hand. Thank you for the lesson. Kira shook his hand, her small human grip disappearing into his armored palm. Thank you for the match, Commander. The academy exploded with cheers. Later that week, Kira found herself in Commander Thelnix's office along with Grethcore and several database administrators. The Coalition database has been updated, Thelnix explained, showing holographic displays. Human classification has been revised. Strength rating, high. Endurance rating, exceptional. Pain tolerance, exceptional. Adaptability, exceptional. Combat effectiveness, very high with proper training. There is more, Grethcore added. The Academy wishes you to assist in developing new training protocols. Many cadets from species with similar adaptive limitations could benefit from human training methods. Kira looked at the data, at the revised classifications that more accurately represented what humans could do. I'd be honored to help. 6 months later, Kira stood in front of a class of new cadets, representing a dozen different species. Some looked eager. Others looked skeptical. She smiled, remembering her own first day. Welcome to Advanced Combat Training, she began. The first thing you need to understand is that power comes in many forms. Raw strength matters, yes. But endurance matters. Pain tolerance matters. Adaptability matters. And most importantly, understanding your own capabilities matters. She walked to the training wall, the same type of wall she had destroyed on her first day. When you see someone throw what looks like a weak punch, don't assume they're incapable of more. They might be operating at social capacity. They might have limiters engaged. They might be testing, learning, conserving energy. She smiled. Or they might just be being polite. The cadets laughed. The goal of this program is to help you understand your own biology better. To recognize what your body can do, and when to use those capabilities. Because the most dangerous opponent isn't always the strongest or the fastest. It's the one who knows exactly what they're capable of and uses it at the right moment. She looked around the room, meeting each cadet's eyes. So let's begin. And remember, just because someone's first punch is soft doesn't mean they're weak. It might just mean they haven't shown you what they can really do yet.